Great. Well, we'll go ahead and jump right in. Thank you to everyone for joining us. This is our first town hall of 2025, so welcome back. We are grateful to see so many of you joining us today, and particularly so many members of the community. We have families and supporters, members from industry and the medical community. This is how we drive progress, bringing everybody together in one space to collaborate and learn from one another. So great to see you all. I want to start by thanking our team at EBRP, who's on the line with us today, Katrina, Margot, Dan, in particular, shout out to Allison, who does such an amazing job and just a ton of work to make these town halls come to life. So thank you to the EBRP team. For this month's town hall, we are here to talk about bench to bedside care for EB, from caring for somebody with EB, using the currently available tools and resources, to the innovative work being done at the University of Colorado to evolve this care. Today, we are extremely honored to be joined by Kate Holler, an EB mom and a fierce EB advocate, alongside the dedicated medical team from the University of Colorado. You'll hear about the Holler family's journey with EB and the way that they care for their daughter Rowan has evolved. And you'll hear from Dr. Jamie Feinstein about world-class work being done at the EB Clinic at the Children's Hospital of Colorado. And lastly, from Dr. Anya Bilousova on the groundbreaking research she and her team are doing and working on every day to change the future of EB and actually rare disease at large. Just to provide a quick overview of the format today, we ask that everybody please stay on mute to respect our esteemed speakers. We'll save questions for our Q&A session at the end, and we'll first start with those questions that were pre-submitted that we received when you registered, and we will do our best to answer all the questions on the chat. And if for some reason you forget a question or we don't get to it, please do not worry. You can send it to our team. You'll see Allison McGettigan from EBRP on the line. You can send it to her as a direct message if you're more comfortable, or just put it in the chat, and we will track all those and make sure that we get to each and every one of your questions. Before I pass it over to our wonderful speakers, I thought we could start off the new year with a quick overview of EBRP's progress and also an update on the research we funded last year in 2024. For those of you on the line that may be newer to us, just a quick background on our organization. EBRP was founded in 2010 with one big, bold, audacious goal, and that is to treat and cure EB as quickly as possible, and in the process, pioneer a path for additional rare diseases, 95% of which have no approved treatments. EBRP is the largest global nonprofit funding research to treat and cure EB, and since our inception, we've raised over $70 million to fund more than 160 innovative EB research projects. The work has led to a transformation of the EB landscape from 2 clinical trials when we started to now almost 50 clinical trials, over half of which EBRP is very proud to have directly funded. We've gone from 0 treatments to 2 FDA-approved treatments in 2023 alone, and we hope that on the horizon, in April of this year, we have the potential to have our 3rd FDA-approved treatment for EB. These milestones and the momentum is really exciting, but it would not be possible without so many of you on this call. So we thank you for making it possible. And to be clear, these are stepping stones on our journey to a cure, but not our destination. Our team is laser focused today, more than ever, on delivering that cure. And in order to achieve that, we need to continue to fund and accelerate the most innovative EB research around the world. We are very proud to say that last year was a record-setting year for the organization. We funded 18 innovative and impactful projects across 6 countries, totaling $5.6 million in research funding. These projects span all subtypes of EB and include a variety of unique approaches, from gene therapies to skin organoids, squamous cell carcinoma treatments, exon skipping, drug repurposing, and IPS and stem cell editing, which you will hear much more about today from the experts. With that, it is my pleasure to introduce you to our amazing speakers today. We are very lucky to have you all with us. We know you're incredibly busy people, so we thank you for making the time. We are honored to be joined by an unstoppable EB advocate, mother to Fox, Celine, and Rowan, who lives with recessive dystrophic EB, and one of my very good friends, Kate Holler. I've known the Holler family for 7 years now, and Kate, Jason, your whole family continuously remain in awe of your determination, bravery, advocacy, and ambassadorship. With us today, we also have the amazingly talented and dedicated University of Colorado team, Dr. Jamie Feinstein, professor of pediatrics at University of Colorado, primary care pediatrician at Colorado Children's Hospital. Jamie is also the medical director at the Colorado Children's Health Research Initiative, the director of the Clinical Faculty Scholarships Program at Colorado Clinical and Translational Sciences Institute, and the pediatric director of the EB Multidisciplinary Program at Colorado Children's. And with that long list of many titles, he still has time to give back and volunteer in the EB community. And Jamie actually ran the New York City Marathon for us a couple years ago. So I don't know how you find the time, Jamie, but somehow you do it. Last but certainly not least, Dr. Ganna Bilousova is an associate professor of dermatology at the University of Colorado. She has a long history of translational research in inherited skin conditions and is also the director of the Stem Cell Biobank and Disease Modeling Core, one of the first brilliant researchers I met 7 years ago. And it's just been quite an honor, Anya, to see how your research has progressed to be at the point it is today, which we will hear more about. With that, it is now my pleasure to pass it over to the amazing and incredible Kate Holler.
Thanks, Michael. I appreciate it so much. Yeah, so some of you may know us, some of you may not. Me and my husband, Jason, we used to live in Austin, Texas, and that's kind of where this story begins when we got pregnant with our daughter, Rowan. She was the first child to be born on either side of our family, so we were just so excited. Everybody was super excited and just overjoyed at expecting her arrival. It had been a little bit difficult getting pregnant with Rowan, which was a little bit of a surprise because we were in our 20s, we were young. And, a little bit of a difficult pregnancy, but nothing to be concerned about. Yeah, we were given no reason for concern. And I remember so clearly the day that, my OB sat me down and was talking about genetic testing after I got pregnant with Rowan. And I just remember saying, oh, well, I think we're good. I think we're gonna forego the testing. And not that EB may not have been included in that testing. It frequently is not. And we just said, no, there's no history of genetic conditions on either side of our family, so we're just going to go ahead and skip it. So March 25th, 2015, Rowan was born via C-section. She was an upside down baby, so she was born C-section and planned, and everything was going, according to plan. We went in early in the morning. She was born. And I remember thinking, she was having trouble breathing when she was first born. So she was taken to the NICU right away from the OR when she was born. So I only got to see her briefly, and then she went away to the NICU to get help with the breathing. After a couple hours, she came back and she was all good to go. They said, perfectly healthy little girl. And we brought her back to our room, learning as first parents how to take care of this just absolutely precious newborn baby. We were just over the moon. We're first-time parents. We've never done this before, so everything was new. But I do remember my parent intuition looking at things on her and being, thinking to myself, this doesn't look normal. She had blisters on the surface of her eyes, what looked like blisters, But of course, I was like, that's not what that could be. That doesn't make any sense to me. I saw like her nail beds were really red, like underneath her nails were all really red, and she had a little wound on her back, like a little scab, the head scabbed over. And I thought, oh, that's strange. The OB must have accidentally scratched her when she was pulling her out. And just kind of like little by little, I mentioned these things to our providers there at the hospital in Austin, and they were like, oh, it's just weird newborn stuff. It's nothing to be worried about. But I remember when we were diapering her, the diapers started causing her to have bleeding wounds in her diaper area. And I was just like, no, something's wrong. So that's really when the advocacy started, I feel like. I was just like, this isn't right. There's something wrong here. So the provider came in, the doctor was looking at her, and, she was just like, you just need to be more gentle with her. And that was when I was just like, no, this is impossible. Thankfully, somebody from the NICU came in then and said, no, there's something wrong. And so that was kind of the first time the advocacy had started to pay off. Like, I didn't just kind of go along with whatever was said to me. I pushed for, no, this isn't right. We need somebody else. And so that's when she was taken to the NICU. Unfortunately, even though EB was on their list of diagnoses they were checking for, they still applied adhesive sensors to her and then removed them without using adhesive remover. So I think it was the first or second time I saw her in the NICU. Besides these wounds she already had, she had this pretty big wound on her chest where the adhesive sensors had been pulled off, and it just tore her skin off with it. And it was really truly shocking and just terrible as a new mom to see that with your baby. And it was there in the NICU that they did a skin biopsy, and then they did blood work for genetic testing and sent that away. The skin biopsy went to Stanford, and the genetic testing went to Cincinnati Children's Hospital. And it was then that I also realized, the rarity of her condition. A lot of the providers did not know what it was or were obviously unfamiliar. I remember asking one of our doctors there in the NICU, how many patients have you seen with this? And she just said, well, I've read about it in medical school. And I remember that was kind of one of my first indicators that, okay, we may be dealing with providers that haven't seen this before. And then once we got her genetic test results back, like 6 weeks later, that's when we got the diagnosis of recessive dystrophic epidermolysis bullosa. And as many other parents can probably understand, it's just shock and grief for the first, I don't know how long. Trying to deal with the diagnosis was difficult. And we can go to the next slide. So, yeah, our first experiences with the medical system were, enlightening, I would say. As a new mom, I had never experienced the pediatric medical system. And it was these new experiences that really have shaped my experience as a mom, I'll say, especially for Rowan. So Rowan was in the NICU for about 10 days, and it was kind of the craziest thing because there's all these babies there in the NICU, really tiny babies who are very sick. And they're hooked up to all these monitors. And then there was Rowan, and we had advocated for her to not be hooked up to anything. And so actually she's just laying there in her little cot by herself, just swaddled in a blanket. And it was just a very stark contrast. She didn't have anything hooked up to her. And it's still image in my mind, this baby who's there with nothing hooked up to her. Yeah, we were sent home from the NICU with just stacks and stacks of these advanced medical products, these bandages that I had no idea what they were. I remember hoping that when we got it home that they would have instructions in how to use them in with the boxes, but they did not. And it was just a huge learning curve. I was super thankful that we have a family member, my mom, who had experience with wound care in the hospital setting. And so that was really like the basis, I'd say, like the foundation for learning how to care for Rowan. So I'm so thankful for that. And we also were really super lucky to have a great dermatologist team there in Austin, Texas. So they knew what EB was. They treated patients with EB. So they were knowledgeable. We were receiving advice from them that was based on their experience with other patients. However, our other experiences with the medical system when Rowan was first born were not very positive. Her pediatrician's office, I remember the first time we went, so she'd already been diagnosed with this condition with EB, and the pediatrician wanted to take a look in her mouth to see see if she had any erosions or wounds in her mouth, placed a tongue depressor on her tongue, and in my mom brain, I'm thinking this doesn't seem right, but I didn't say anything because I did not want to overstep the boundaries between this patient-doctor relationship. And that's when, the surface of her tongue completely blistered, and then eventually the skin on the blister just completely came off. So her whole tongue was just a raw open wound. And if you can imagine a newborn baby, that their tongue is pretty important in being able to feed and be able to get nutrition. So it was so painful for her to be able to feed after that. I remember that was one of those first experiences with this medical system, and how, doctors and nurses who may not know about EB, could actually cause harm to our daughter. I remember seeing a GI who told us, she doesn't need high calorie formula. She's perfectly fine without it. Again, he didn't have any other patients with EB. We were the only ones. And then at the next appointment, explained to me that she had failure to thrive and that she was burning her own body fat, and that we needed to go on high calorie formula. And so these experiences all together really led us to seek out, who is the most knowledgeable in the country, basically, who's the best in the US, is what I asked our knowledgeable dermatologist, Dr. Diaz in Austin, and she said Children's Hospital, Colorado, their EB clinic. And so that's really what started our, advocacy in trying to advocate for insurance coverage to get this necessary medical care for our daughter. I remember spending hours and hours on the phone with insurance and trying to get them to understand why we needed to go out of state from Texas to Colorado to receive medical care. And I remember just one of the things when I was talking with one of the supervisors was, my daughter's condition is very serious and is life-threatening. Would you feel comfortable with your child, say, if they had a form of pediatric cancer? Would you feel comfortable with your child being treated by a doctor who never treated a child with cancer before? Things like that. And finally, we did break through. There wasn't anything in the state of Texas that was a EB multidisciplinary clinic. And we finally got approval from Texas Medicaid to travel out of state and see the great doctors at the EB clinic. It was just, it was an amazing experience, I'll say, just the first time we went to the EB clinic here in Denver, which is where we now live. The doctors finally, we had this wide range of specialists. They all had not just one or two patients with EB that they had seen, but many patients with EB. We had finally had this like specialist support that we didn't have in any other area besides dermatology. We had this assistance and support with school system. Rowan, was had a speech delay because of the oral involvement of her EB. So she started school early, and we needed help with managing the school system, and they were helping us with that, and knew specifically how to do that with children with EB. We were getting really great nutrition guidance, G-tube guidance. It was the Children's Hospital's EB clinic that sent us a Vitamix blender. They gifted it to us, and we still use that same blender today to blend up her tube feedings, to give her really excellent nutrition through her G-tube when she doesn't feel like eating or drinking anything, which, is frequent. She gets those feeds every day. We also saw really excellent physical therapists and occupational therapists. I was just messaging the other day with one of the great occupational therapists that we would see at the EB clinic, and she was helping us troubleshoot, Rowan, trying to help Rowan do her own hair, style her own hair on her own, and troubleshooting some of the things around that. Just that support, like with the social worker that would come who knew, what we were going through as a family with a child with EB. The GI advice was super knowledgeable. And we also had someone explain the genetics of her EB to us there at the clinic at our first visit. And then we also got more really great advice about the wound care aspect of her condition. So really excellent advice from Dr. Bruckner, and everybody there with dermatology as well. And really just felt we were more in control of what was happening to our family and what was happening with our daughter. And just it was that feeling of support. And so if I could identify like a medical home, I would say the multidisciplinary clinic, the EB clinic, feels like the most like a medical home to me. Um, and then I just wanted to list some of the things that have really helped us along the way. Just as a family, I feel like these are the things that have been helpful for me. Hearing from other parents, especially parents that have kids a little bit older than mine. Things that really helped us were, preventing Rowan's wounds early. We didn't know what we were doing in the beginning. So if she didn't have wounds in a particular area, we wouldn't bandage that area. And I kind of quickly found out that if we didn't bandage an area, she would have wounds in that area. And so, very, very soon after she started becoming more mobile, we realized, okay, we need to be bandaging her most of her body. And, realizing I could either bandage her entire body and keep her skin intact and stop wounds from beginning, or I could leave the bandages off and then she could develop wounds and then I could bandage her whole body. Yep. Oh, and then, then I'd be bandaging her whole body anyways, but she would also be in pain. So that was super, super helpful for us, as well as, now we have these FDA treatments. So not having that progressive wound rewounding process happening was super helpful for us, I think. And now that we're treating her wounds with these new treatments, which are super exciting, we at least have those wounds haven't maybe been happening as long. And I really truly believe that with these new treatments like the Vyjuvek and Filsuvez, that these kids who are getting this now, who are even younger than Rowan, I mean, I just expect that it's going to change the course of the condition for them, the progression of the condition. I'm really hopeful about that. And for Rowan too. And yeah, another thing that's been super hopeful for us as a family is just participating in those clinical trials of those drugs that we really hope will be approved by the FDA. So this is a picture of Rowan. She's getting infusion with the Riacel clinical trial currently that's going on at the EB clinic here at Children's Hospital, Colorado, or in the infusion center. And so we've participated. This is, I think, our third clinical trial, and I think it's really provided us with a sense of hope. It's a really exciting thing to be able to participate, but then I also feel like if you can participate and your child wants to, and you feel good about it, you're really helping the EB community, because this isn't a huge population size. I mean, there's thousands of people, but, when these companies are doing these clinical trials, we know they're super expensive, and meeting their enrollment goals is really important for moving these, trials through to the FDA approval process. So, yeah, that's another thing that's been super exciting for us. And I think this is our third one we've participated in so far. And then, yeah, one of the last things is just being involved with other families with kids with EB, people with EB themselves, has been one of the greatest sources of, I guess, strength for us. Yeah, this is from Venture into Cure's summit in Seattle, where we met other families that we hadn't met before. And then we met other people who, may not have a direct connection to EB, but are supporting the cause. And I think for us as a family, it's just the biggest source of hope, I think, is just interacting with these just wonderful people who have chosen to support this cause that is so dear to us. It's a huge source of hope for us. And then these last couple of things, just, we've done a few things that have been, I think, different than many other families with EB. Rowan started seeing a psychologist very early on. She was about 2 when she started having, the complications that you would have from the medical trauma that these kids are experiencing every day, basically. And so the psychologist was really talking with me and her dad as to how to help handle this, trauma that she's experiencing. and how, how to just assist her with hoping to not make this trauma worse for her. And then we have had the great experience of working with a pain psychologist, which has been amazing, Dr. Popenhagen at Children's Hospital Colorado, working with us and Rowan and how to manage her pain without pain medications. But also just seeing palliative care, which is one of my like really big kind of things that I'm really excited for more people to use, because I think that there's some of our absolute favorite specialists. They have been such a great supporter of optimizing her quality of life, and really, yeah, moving forward, that's what we focus on. Um, is optimizing her quality of life, and palliative care is excellent for doing that. Just like, is Rowan able to do the things that Rowan wants to do? And, helping us troubleshoot that has been amazing. And I think there's this mis, this misinterpretation that palliative care is for end of life care, which is not true. And they're really just the best because they are designed to help kids just, with severe EB forms. They know so much and they can help so much. So
Thank you so much, Kate. And I know I speak for all of us, just such deep gratitude and thanks to you. You've always been just such a strong leader in this community. And whether that's helping newly diagnosed families navigate to the resources that will be the best for them and their family, to understanding clinical trials and how to navigate insurance and multiple different types of therapy options that could be available. You consistently have just been such a beacon for this community, and the bravery and courage and determination that you overcome and show on a daily basis just inspires all of us. So just a tremendous thank you, thank you, thank you. And Rowan is, for those of you that know her, just the most amazing young lady, and so many talents and so creative. And one day a ukulele player to a singer to an artist to a pumpkin picker, and she's just the most unbelievable young lady. So just big thanks to you and your whole family.
thank you so much, Michael. I mean, I look at Rowan and she kind of directs me, how, where to go. I feel like, she's who I look up to, so I appreciate it.
Well, we look up to you, and thank you again so much. It is now another honor to pass it over to the great Dr. Jamie Feinstein.
Thank you. So I'm going to echo your words, Michael, and Kate, thank you. I really can't tell you how many people you have supported with your words and your wisdom and your willingness to always share your experience. I just wanted to highlight for everybody, for those of you who don't know, Kate's not only an advocate for the EB community, but she's also an advocate for the larger community of children with special healthcare needs. And because of that, we are all so lucky. And I just want to say thank you, Kate. So to introduce myself, I'm Jamie Feinstein. I'm the pediatric director of our Children's Hospital Colorado Multidisciplinary EB Clinic, and I co-direct the program with Dr. Anna Bruckner, who's our dermatologist. My training is a little bit different in that I'm a general pediatrician who has specialized in the care of children with rare conditions and medical complexity. So in addition to leading the EB clinic, I also practice as a primary care clinician, and I have the privilege of being Rowan's primary care pediatrician. So what I'm hoping to share today over the next 10 minutes or so is why the synergy between multiple types of providers that practice in our clinic, who all approach EB from different perspectives, has been so impactful for providing excellent care to the EB community. So as a complex care pediatrician, my focus is really always on the big picture, the whole person, the whole family. And naturally, our team's main goals have always been to maximize health and well-being for children, to support kids and their families to live incredible lives, and to be on our toes and really ready for new treatments and therapies as they emerge. And I, like many of the members of our EB team here, really love thinking creatively about how to make all of these things a reality. for our patients and families. So one of the ways that we have accelerated progress in EB clinical care is through really leaning in fully to the multidisciplinary clinic model. When I joined the program at Children's Hospital Colorado in 2010, there were a handful of national programs that really provided true multidisciplinary care. And the number of sites that now offer comprehensive EB care has really increased dramatically over these past 15 years. And here's why I think this is so important. So I've watched so many great ideas take shape and form when there are many minds thinking about one problem, all sitting in the same room together. Comprehensive teams that work together over long periods of time really develop and accumulate deep knowledge about EB. And that certainly improves direct patient care. But I think it's just as important, it really allows us to teach across the healthcare system, across an institution, and really make sure that we have so many EB-friendly ambassadors throughout the different clinical spaces, clinics, inpatient rooms in a hospital and healthcare system. So I'm not kidding when I say that we have a large team. I think we are close to 40 people with substantial EB expertise at this point. And one of those things that I'm most proud about for our team is that we really have continued to expand to truly offer, like I said, whole person care. And you can see on this slide all of the different types of team members and aspects of care that we address. And this is not a small undertaking. Our team meets twice a month to do clinics for patients. We have entire full team coordination meetings that happen both before clinic and after clinic. Then we have follow-up meetings that happen 2 weeks out after clinic to make sure that all the plans that we came up with patients and families are put into place and that people are doing the things that need to happen. And we're really lucky to have a hospital system too that values multidisciplinary care. They've created a very large clinical space for us to do this, where we can see as an entire team, multiple patients and families, and really all be in the same room together. And that close proximity means that we really are able to approach things collaboratively from multiple perspectives. So, like I said, we are a big team, we are a comprehensive team, and I can't go through every single member, but I will say that everyone is vitally important to providing really good and comprehensive EB care. So, here are 3 brief examples of the way that our multidisciplinary approach has helped change clinical care and improving the health for the patients that we serve with EB. And because I'm a general pediatrician, I'm going to take the next few slides to shine a light on a few highly important real-world priorities that I think most patients and families experience and think about. So one of my mentors in EB, his name was Dr. Steve Berman. He founded our EB clinic here at Children's Hospital Colorado more than 2 decades ago. And he used to ask kids rhetorically when he walked into a room, what are the 3 most important things that we need to talk about today? And some of you on this call may have actually experienced this. And I remember watching this interaction happen because teens would roll their eyes and, everybody would sit there knowing what that answer was and then start laughing because he always expected the same answer. And that was 1, nutrition, 2, nutrition, and 3, nutrition. And we used to routinely have to admit patients for nutrition supplementation and weight gain and blood transfusions. And over the course of my career, these last 15 years, this has become less frequent. And you might ask why. So EB friendly anesthesia and pediatric surgeons at our center have developed the expertise to place G-tubes safely. G-tubes themselves have become lower profile and higher tech, more durable, better technology. And our GI doctors really have been able to help manage those G-tubes, to help perfect approaches to dilations for esophageal blistering and ways to alleviate constipation or treat diarrhea. The kinds and the numbers of formulas on the market has really exploded. so that we can dial in nutrition and focus on exact micronutrients. And our nutritionist and I work hand in hand to actually test for those micronutrients, and we work with anesthesia and other people on our team to give iron infusions during procedures and make sure that we are comprehensively delivering nutritional care. So as you can see, all of this takes a very coordinated effort and constant discussion between all of us. But it means that many of our kids are gaining weight, they're growing their bodies, and most importantly, growing their brains. As Kate highlighted a little bit earlier, things have changed in the way that we help with pain and anxiety too, which is unfortunately another big component of everyday life with EB. And again, thanks to multidisciplinary collaborations, we have creatively added modalities for helping with pain and anxiety. There have been advancements in what we can do both with and, like Kate said, without medications. We have an outstanding EB pain psychologist who is licensed to provide virtual therapy across multiple states where our patients come from, using age-appropriate techniques. We have a constant partnership with our outpatient pain team, with pediatric psychiatry, with an integrated pediatric pharmacist, so that we can expand the types of medications that we use. We've started to add things like antidepressants, chronic pain medicines like gabapentin, and using things like cannabinoids with THC and CBD ingredients that also help with chronic pain and anxiety. And our pediatric pharmacist, who's integrated, thinks carefully about which medications are safest so that we don't cause unnecessary side effects. And all of this we're trying to learn constantly more about. So wanted to just say thank you to EBRP, who supports the EB clinical characterization and outcomes database, which really helps many sites across the US gather information about the EB care that's being delivered to patients and the outcomes that are most meaningful for patients and families. And there's a lot of active studies that have changed clinical care that have come out of this characterization database. And then finally, I wouldn't be a good pediatrician if I didn't worry about early childhood development. And again, this is so incredibly important and a dance between many partners in care. Our entire team wants kids to be able to do everything they want to do. And we have some of the most creative EB occupational therapists, physical therapists, and speech therapists that make that happen. We have so many more options to support mobility, and there really are so many newer materials for grips and gloves and shoes. And sometimes if what's needed doesn't exist, our incredible therapists will simply make it out of whole cloth. It's pretty spectacular. And then the final point I'd like to quickly touch on is that I think most importantly, when we get to the point where children and their parents are ready for school, we have EB care coordinators, an EB school liaison, a family navigator, and a social work partner who partner with families and with the school systems to provide comprehensive care about EB to teachers, to the support staff, but also to the classrooms of kids and the parents of those kids that will be part of their community. And we work very diligently to develop EB-specific school care plans for that child that are many pages long, but provide really detailed care so that the child gets what they need during the day and parents can feel confident. And I won't lie that sometimes it's the kids who are really the ones who are ready to start school, and it's the parents that we have to wrap our arms around to support during this amazing and sometimes really scary transition. But it's an incredible experience to get kids to school. So all of this is towards that common goal of really making sure that kids can do whatever they put their minds to. And because of that, we spend a lot of time together as a team, as a community of clinicians and patients, and we've really built a local community both inside and outside of the hospital. So 2 examples of this are the Courage Classic, a 2-day bike ride sponsored by Children's Hospital Colorado that goes through the Rocky Mountains in July and helps fundraise for our EB Family Assistance Fund. And we have several teenagers and young adults with EB who have cycled that 2-day ride and crossed that finish line, and it's incredible. So feel free to come join us in July if you wish. And then finally, this year, we're really excited to join the national community in the plunge effort. And Dr. Gorell, who you saw earlier on the call, is one of the incredible dermatologists on our team, and she is going to lead our Colorado plunge effort. So I'll finish up by saying that we need to be ready for the emerging treatments and therapies that are coming. And some of these you're going to hear about right now next, but we need to continue to maximize health and well-being to be on our toes and ready to go. So that means we need to continue to offer outstanding multidisciplinary care, which so many EB centers worldwide are currently doing. So I am more hopeful than ever with all of these clinical advancements that we've made. And with that, I want to say thank you to the EB community. Thank you to EBRP. And for anyone on this call, please always feel free to reach out to me if I can be of any help. And I'll turn it over back to Michael.
Thank you so much, Dr. Feinstein. And, if Jamie didn't spend all his hours caring for the EB community in the clinic, he bikes, he skis, he plunges, and he runs marathons for the EB community as well. So if you're able to, please join him in those initiatives. And, we just commend you, Doc, honestly, not only just for your expertise and your brilliance and your innovation that you bring to the clinic, but really your compassion, and the compassion that you give to the families you serve is just exemplary. So cannot thank you enough. And just imagining, as you mentioned, 40 members of that interdisciplinary clinic to provide care for one individual living with EB is just a ton of work. And, thanks to you and Dr. Gorell and Dr. Bruckner, and, it's a big team and it's a lot to manage. And those teams always need quarterbacks and people to make sure that it is a coordinated care approach. And so, some of us, only because the Super Bowl's next weekend, so try to stay away from the sports metaphors. And some of us on the line are Chiefs fans, maybe just me, but you're the Mahomes, sir, of coordinating that care. So grateful for you. And as you mentioned, to hear more on what happens just right down the street from you at the University of Colorado with the amazing Dr. Ganna Bilousova.
Yeah, hello everyone, and thank you for joining. And I would like actually to thank EBRP for really providing such an amazing communication platform for all of us to share our research and our stories. And before I start, I of course would like to thank all EB patients, not just for providing all the specimens for our research, but basically for motivation and inspiration to move forward so we can really make a difference for the community. So with that, I would like to introduce the team that works at the University of Colorado toward developing a personalized permanent therapy for epidermolysis bullosa. So our team consists of basic scientists such as Dr. Denis Rup and Igor Kogut, as well as myself, as well as our team members. We have lots of people, so of course I won't be able to list everyone, but I'm really thankful that we have such an amazing team that really helps us to move the research forward. And of course, I would like to thank our EB clinic, and in particular, Dr. Anna Bruckner, who was with us from the beginning, who helped us to really develop our therapy and who we couldn't really do much without. And of course, Emily Gorell, who actually just joined the University of Colorado, our department. And we are very excited because now we will have someone on the adult side to really move our therapy forward. So what is the goal of our therapy? So first of all, we would like to achieve stable and lasting wound closure in EB patients. We would like to deliver the therapy in the most effective and least disruptive way for the patient. So less travel, basically trying to kind of maintain the routine. And obviously, we try to increase accessibility of the therapy, and we think we can do it through centralized manufacturing, meaning that we can produce therapy at one site, but at the same time, we can easily deliver it to any part of the world to really make it more accessible for EB patients. So what is our therapy? So in our therapy, we're using induced pluripotent stem cells or iPS cells. So the question is, what are iPS cells? So we generate iPS cells by collecting cells from the patients in need of treatment. Then we reprogram these cells using specific factors into embryonic stem cell-like state, which is very immature state. But this state allows us to do many things with these cells. First of all, iPS cells are easy to grow in the tissue culture dish, meaning that it's easy to manufacture for therapy. They are also easy to correct on the genetic level, meaning that we can actually achieve specific genetic correction of the mutation that causes the EB. Finally, iPS cells could be differentiated into any cell type in the body, so we can basically derive skin cells back from iPS cells that we manipulated previously. So if you look at the schematic that's shown here, so the therapy looks like that. We collect the cells from EB patient, then we reprogram these cells into iPS cells, and at the same time, we perform specific genetic correction of the mutation. So here I have to note the limitation of our therapy, that we are doing it very specific, meaning it's mutation specific. So once we generate genetically corrected iPS cells, we can differentiate them back into skin stem cells, for example, keratinocyte and fibroblast stem cells, and return them back to the same patient in need of treatment. The idea is that as we return these iPS cells, genetically corrected iPS cell-derived skin cells back into the patient, these cells will persist for life, meaning that we can achieve permanent cure, at least in that area that we transplanted. So the question arises, why do we even use iPS cells? Why can't we just use cells that we directly isolate from the patient? And can I get next slide, please? So basically, using iPS cells have lots of benefits for developing like personalized cell therapy. So if we take cells directly from the patient, these cells have very limited growth potential, meaning that we can only expand it in the dish for a limited number of time. And during this passaging, the cells age, so they get older and they're not as potent. But iPS cells can grow indefinitely, meaning it will be very easy for us to expand the number of these cells and basically increase the manufacturing potential of these cells. Importantly, during reprogramming, we rejuvenate cells, meaning that the cells become younger and more functional, which may be very important for EB patients. If we work with cells that we directly isolate from the patient, it's actually very difficult to achieve specific gene correction. So just to remind you, the EB101 trial that is being performed by Abiona is using cells that directly isolated from the patient. But to correct the defect, we basically use viruses and to restore the expression of collagen 7. And these viruses, they do integrate into the genome. And of course, this poses a risk for cancer in the future. However, iPS cells, we can correct very specifically. So if we know the mutation, and in most cases we know the mutation, we can specifically correct the mutation in these cells, and thus avoiding this random integration that is a risk for viral correction. In addition, iPS cells could be differentiated into any cell types. So we achieve the correction in iPS cells, but then we can differentiate these genetically corrected cells into any cell type in the body, including all different skin cell types that we have in our skin, which is actually make these cells very universal for therapy development. So let's look more specifically at the steps of our therapies. So from left to right, there is a schematic of the therapy. So you see on the top left, these are the patient's skins or fibroblasts that we isolate from our DEB patient. Then we take these cells and reprogram them into iPS cells, and at the same time, we perform genetic correction of the mutation using Cas9 nucleases. Again, the therapy is very mutation specific. So what you see in the second image, basically left middle image, this is how iPS cells look like. What you see is not a single cell, it's a colony of cells. That's how iPS cells grow. So once we have genetically corrected iPS cells, then we need to differentiate them into skin cells. To achieve very efficient differentiation, we actually do it through skin organoids, as you could see on this bottom left 3 images. This is how these skin organoids look like, and they have all the components of the skin that you are looking for. So organoids are just like a mini organs that we can grow from iPS cells. This is the versatility of these cells for therapy development. So we can basically get any cell type we want. And you could see that in the image, for those who kind of knows how immunofluorescence works, we basically use specific antibody to detect the presence of keratinocytes and fibroblasts in these organoids. So in the middle image on the left, you see the expression of keratin 10, keratin 14. These are the markers of keratinocytes. So we know these organoids contain keratinocytes. Then on next image, you see collagen 7. Basically, we know that there is expression of collagen 7 in our genetically corrected organoids that confirms that the genetic correction was successful. Then we take these organoids and isolate individually keratinocytes and fibroblasts. That's what you could see on the right bottom image. And these cells also express collagen 7, which confirms that the correction was successful. So then the question is, how are we going to deliver these cells back to the patients? Of course, we can try to generate epidermal sheets similar to what Abiona is doing, or maybe do more complex 3D skin equivalents and integrate both keratinocytes and fibroblasts. But we actually decide to try an easier approach, where we can take these cells, mix them in a fibrin gel, and deliver as a suspension on top of the wound. And the delivery could be accomplished either via so-called spray-on-skin device. For example, one was developed by Avita Medical, where you take these cells, put them in a syringe, and then spray on top of the wound. Or we can use 2-chamber syringe to deliver these cells as a gel on top of the wounds. And the beauty here is that because these are just individual cells, we can actually freeze them. And after thawing, these cells could still get engrafted. And frozen cells are much easier to transport and store, meaning that using this approach, we can really develop a centralized manufacturing center where we can produce cells, patient-specific cells, we can freeze them and store it there. And then we can ship these cells elsewhere in the world whenever they are needed for that particular patient. And patient doesn't need to travel to the site of the manufacturing. So how do we know that cell suspension can actually be used to reconstitute skin? So for that, we actually develop an in vivo mouse model where we technically take a mouse, as you could see, like left image, we take the mouse, we cut the piece of the skin on top of the mouse, then we insert a specific silicone chamber into this wound. Then we deliver suspension of keratinocytes and fibroblasts mixed with the fibrin gel inside of this chamber and let these cells to self-organize. Technically, within 7 days, these cells can self-organize and create a mini human graft growing on top of the wound. That's what you can appreciate from the picture of 7-day graft on the right. Then we wait for another 5 to 6 weeks for these grafts to heal and form kind of a piece of human skin grown on top of the mouse. So how do we know that this piece of skin is actually a human skin? For that, we perform specific antibody staining. So we take the skin, we do the sectioning, and that's how the sectioning looks like. So on the top left image is so-called H&E staining, which gives us like a general morphology of the grafted skin. And here from this image, we already could see the formation of epidermis and dermis. But how do we know it's actually human skin and not just a wound healing from the mouse skin? For that, we use the antibody staining. So in the middle image on the left, you could basically see the staining for mouse-specific keratin 1. And you see how these green colors kind of abruptly end on the side, and the middle is not stained for green. It's because the middle part is human, and our antibody is mouse-specific, so they do not react with human. So at the same time, on the bottom image, we have a human-specific loricrin, and loricrin, one of the markers of the epidermis as well. And you could see that it's only this middle section that gets stained because this is human skin. Similar, human vimentin, red, this is marker of fibroblasts or the dermis. And you could see that it actually stains the dermis of our grafting area. We could also see the restoration of collagen 7 in our grafts, as you could see on the right, as well as if we look at bioelectron microscopy, we actually see the restoration of anchoring fibrils in these grafts. So in summary, we basically developed all steps necessary for our iPS cell-based therapy. We are currently adapting this step to clinical manufacturing because, of course, what we do in the research lab, we cannot really do for the patients. We need a specific facility, and luckily, the University of Colorado has Gates biomanufacturing facility that actually allows and helps us to basically transition our research grade therapy into a clinical grade rather therapy. And with that, I really would like to thank the Gates Institute for providing lots of support on that end. We are finalizing our Interact documents to submit to the FDA. This is a key step toward the clinical trial approval. So we are more or less finished with that. So hopefully the FDA will give us a valuable feedback. And after that, we'll know how much time we need to actually go into clinical trial. And of course, if our therapy works for EB, the hope is that it will be just easier to get an approval for any other genetic disease that affects internal organs, where basically it will be hard to monitor the effect of such a novel therapy. So with that, again, I would like to thank everyone, the patients in particular, EBRP, for all the support, and of course, all our clinicians who are really working hard to make life easier for affected patients. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Bilousova. I mean, wow, just a tremendous amount of gratitude to have somebody as brilliant and driven as you focused on EB every single day in the lab. And, I was feverishly trying to take notes, but organoids, iPS cell gene editing, 3D skin equivalents, biobanking, personalized cells, spray-on skin, fibrin gel, reconstitution of human cells, reprogrammed gene correction. These, are things that in the not so distant past seem like science fiction, and you're turning these things into a reality. And I remember 7 years ago, just being new to learning about EB in the community, visiting your lab, and it was the first place that I visited, and I left with just so much hope that individuals like yourself can drive definitive and disruptive and impactful treatments for the community that we all know. And we heard from Kate, there's not more deserving people on the planet to get these type of therapeutics as quickly as possible. And then, comparative such a short time to see this so close to the clinic, just incredibly indebted and grateful for you. So thank you so much. I'm going to move us on to the question portion of the town hall. As we mentioned, we've received a large amount of questions in advance. That should not stop you of putting questions in the chat. We will try to get to as many as possible. And if we don't, we will gather them all and get back to you. If we miss you for any reason, you can email or DM Allison on the line. You can email us at info@ebresearch.org, and we will make sure that we get every single one of your questions answered to the best of our ability. So Anya, Dr. Bilousova, I'm going to stay with you for just a second because it came up in the chat, and it actually was a handful of questions we received in advance. But just as a starting point, do you foresee that this work, this iPS cell work, may benefit other EB subtypes beyond just recessive dystrophic EB?
Absolutely. Actually, in fact, we are in parallel working on EB simplex. Yeah, I do see the question regarding whether we can use something similar for EB simplex. And we're actually working on developing very similar therapy for EB simplex, which in a way will be even more universal than what we do currently for RDB. As I mentioned, our RDB therapy is mutation specific. So we really need to look at each mutation and correct each mutation individually. With the dominant subtype of EB simplex, we're developing the therapy where we can inactivate that bad allele of the gene that actually causes the disease. In this case, the therapy becomes more universal. So in a way, we think that's whatever we do really can benefit other type of EB, and that's the reason why, in fact, we're actually working in parallel on both the EBS and RDB.
Thank you so much, Doc. Kate, this question goes to you. And the question is, given your knowledge and your leadership in the space, could you advise, or are you aware of any life hacks for those families living with EB?
Oh man, I feel like I need some life hacks always. But I will say, I don't know, grocery delivery is like a huge deal. Anywhere you can get groceries delivered from to your door is amazing. We use Walmart for grocery delivery, and it's awesome. I mean, we make dinner on non-bandage change days, and then we have the leftovers the next day during bandage change days, so that I'm not like having to make dinner and then like somehow bandage, this child at the same time. It doesn't work out. We use like cheap bins from IKEA to I'll pre-cut a bunch of bandages, and I'll have like these bins from IKEA set out on my table. And so I'll like cut a huge stack of bandages, and I'll like put them right into like the separate bins, so that I have like 5 bins for 5 different bandage changes, and it's so much easier to keep things separate. So just like off the top of my head, that's what I would say. I mean, those are like the main ones that we use, but life hacks are always good. I need some more.
And like you said, Kate, you will take them from anybody, but I also think you could teach a class on this as well. So maybe that's one of our next sessions. Another question for you, Kate, from your perspective, how have you seen the EB landscape and community change over the years since Rowan was born?
Yeah, I mean, just the fact that there's FDA approved therapies now. I mean, it's light years. I mean, we were just thinking about that when Rowan was born and dreaming about what if this was possible, that there would be a, diagnosis, your child, is born with this, and then at the same time you get that diagnosis, you're also told, well, you know what, there's these 2 treatments that are approved to treat this condition, would lead to so much hope. So I mean, that's just like light years of difference. I mean, we were listening to the people from, with Vyjuvek about how they were doing the mouse studies with the mice at the time when Rowan was born, to try to work on their gene editing drug that we now use on Rowan every week. And I remember listening to them speaking and just being so hopeful that we would have access to this. And now we see it as a reality. So I mean, things are very different, and we're so happy that there's options now.
Thanks, Kate. And as we talk about, great to have options, but much more work to do. And I think Dr. Feinstein and Dr. Bilousova are a big part of continuing that momentum. This one's to you, Dr. Feinstein. I was so impressed by your EB clinic, Jamie. What would your advice be for other EB clinics that are just starting to come together or newer in their development cycle?
It's a great question, absolutely. And I'm more than willing to talk offline about the mechanics of getting a program together and working within a hospital system with any provider or clinic or family that wants to reach out to me. So I'm happy to have that bigger discussion. What I would say is kind of key and central to building our team is something that Kate mentioned, which is that finding people who are really willing to think outside of the box, be creative, and kind of committed, go the long haul with the team really helps create a collaborative environment where we can just move forward much faster than any one of us can. So there are a lot of ways that we've done that. And like I said, I'll be happy to connect with anybody to talk about building a program specifically.
Thank you so much, Jamie. This one goes to Dr. Feinstein and Dr. Bilousova. What do you think the biggest barriers to breakthroughs are for EB research? How can patients get involved? And Dr. Bilousova, you talked a little bit about the timelines, but considering those first 2 questions, overcoming those barriers, what are their patient involvement? How can we put speed in some of those timelines? Because I think any family member here on the line asks the natural and obvious question, which is, the things that you're talking about, they want as soon as possible. So what are those barriers? How can families get involved and help to accelerate getting these type of things into the clinic as quickly as possible?
So yeah, it's actually interesting, like good question, because first of all, the barrier at this point, I would say the FDA and what the FDA would really want from us in terms of verifying the safety and efficacy of the therapy. So FDA does put lots of requirements, especially for cell therapy. And as you can imagine, there are so many steps in our therapy that each step may or may not necessarily introduce some safety risks for the patients. So for us at this point, I wouldn't call it the barrier. It's technically time. We just need more time to make sure that all steps of our therapy is really reproducible, they're safe, and they will not harm the patients. In terms of how the patients and the community can help, so I would say maybe even talking to the FDA, talking to regulatory people and just educate them about the severity of the disease and how it's really important to move faster. So FDA do not really put undue burden on us when they ask us to really do lots of additional screenings. So while these screening are important, we really need to find the right balance. And what I find that FDA may not really be knowledgeable about the EBs. So I think really educate regulatory body is probably the important thing for the EB community to do. And I suspect, and I already see EBRP is really doing a great job in this area. So that would be my answer at this point.
And then from my perspective, part of my other role on campus is helping start up clinical trials within the children's system. And I think that we, for clinical trials, need to enroll as many patients at as many sites as possible. But knowing that the startup process takes time and that we really need to advocate because each startup process is different at different universities. So we need to be kind of well ahead of the game, thinking about how to get clinical trials up and running so that we can get the data that we need to get it into patients' hands as soon as possible.
No, thank you both. And this question for you, Kate, and actually from a genetic counselor. What do you wish genetic counselors knew about families' experience with EB? In other words, how can we provide better support? And, maybe that question's amplified by some of the comments in the chat about, how they wish the experience in those first few days, weeks, and months in the hospital would have been different. But what do you wish would have been different from that genetic counselor point of view?
Yeah, I mean, I think that we need more genetic counselors is one thing. We saw our first genetic counselor when Rowan was 9 months old. So at that point, we very much knew what her condition entailed. But I think not, just for providers in general with genetic conditions, not guessing, even though the patients might press you to tell them what you think the diagnosis might be as far as the subtype goes. That's what we experienced. Was we had those who were working with Rowan, like clinicians, saying, you guys are so lucky. You have a form of EB that will get better as she gets older. She has simplex, and telling us these things, which you can never know with the genetic condition. So I think that, just offering reassurance to families until they get that diagnosis. And then when they do get the diagnosis, offering reassurance that there's going to be support for them. I think that's the main thing.
Thank you so much, Kate. Well, I know we're running a little bit over. I'll close the questions for this town hall. But as we said, these are always intended to start, inspire, and continue conversation. So if we didn't get to your question, please email our team or drop it in the chat, and we will follow up with you and source those questions to this amazing panel that we've had here today. Kate, again, you and your family and Rowan are the why of our mission and the true north of why we exist. And the how is Dr. Feinstein and Dr. Bilousova, which is cutting edge clinical and research work to deliver options and hope and therapeutics and ultimately a cure to all those families across the planet. The what is to fund their important work, to continue to accelerate it and make it possible. And, everybody on this call, there's so many supporters. If you're looking for ways to get involved. They're nearly endless, but just a couple ideas in case you were curious. First of all, for the scientific community, we are currently in an active grant cycle that opened a few weeks ago, and the deadline is March 7th. So if you are interested in getting a project funded, you can go to our website and read the full guidelines. But, in short, we're looking for projects that are impactful and significantly improve the quality of life of those living with EB. Projects that are definitive and curative will be prioritized. We want to see projects that are 0 to 4 years away from the clinic for patients to actually receive the benefits of the science. And those timelines have continued to get shorter and shorter, particularly over the last few years of this work being in the clinic or close to the clinic, as you heard from Dr. Bilousova today. So if you are a brilliant mind interested in research funding, please apply on the website. The plunge, the plunge, the plunge. You heard from Dr. Feinstein that this will be taking place in Colorado. If you are not close to Colorado, do not worry. There's 22 sites and counting across the planet. I see many plunge faces on the line. I see Brenda. I see Annie if you're in the North Carolina area. I see Nathan Burmeister. If you are in the Australia area, there's plunges in Massachusetts and New York and California and Texas and all around the world. And if you struggle to get to one of those places, you can plunge in your bathtub, you can plunge in your pond, you can plunge in your lake, whatever you want to do to support the EB community. It's a fun way to raise awareness and get involved with the mission. And finally, you're here, you're on a town hall. This is something that we started last year. These are open forums to meet and hear directly from the brilliant researchers doing the work, to hear from the families and their stories and their inspiration. As we heard from Kate today, we have a town hall every single month about this time of the month. February is already scheduled and booked. We will have our board member and just another great parent ambassador and Mr. Nathan Burmeister and Professor Alison Cowan of the University of South Australia to talk about some unique approaches and therapeutics to EB and also Nathan's lived experience. So, you can email Allison on our team. You can go on our website. You can email us at info@ebresearch.org. Sign up for the newsletter so you won't miss all these many exciting ways to get involved. And in conclusion, thank you. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to everybody that took the time this evening or this morning or the middle of the day, depending on where you are. We have a few different countries represented on the line. We hope you will continue to stay involved. We hope you'll continue to take action, and we look forward to seeing you all very soon, hopefully before the next town hall, and taking action and get involved with this community to do your part to join this team whose sole focus is to accelerate treatments to patients and families and ultimately a cure as quickly as possible. So we wish you all a good night, a good morning, or a good afternoon, depending on where you are. And thank you so much for joining us today.